This episode of Auto Dealer Live is brought to you by Auto Dealer University.
Hey, here we are. It's Thursday, 3:30, and it's Auto Dealer Live. It's time for Auto Dealer Live. Hey, what a difference a week makes in this business and in this world. Things have, what's going on back there, by the way, guys? What's going on?
David Villa will be joining us shortly. He is wrapping up a deal right now on the phone.
Okay. All right. Yes. David Villa will be in the studio shortly to join me and us as we talk to dealers around the country. And, we're going to tackle this thing head on today, this ugly coronavirus that's happening, that's affecting our industry. We've got some good news, though, when it comes to how some of the manufacturers are responding, some of the finance companies are responding, and essentially, let's just talk about the fact that, life as we know it has changed for the moment, especially in the stores. Traffic has slowed down at many places. There are some places, which I'm sure that Dave is probably going to talk about when he gets in here, that are actually finding some opportunity. And today we're going to talk, we're going to mention several things about opportunity. And because that's really the big question, right, is how do we now not only endure, but how do we keep thriving in this auto business when things are happening that are out of our control? And even though we've been given some tools that we can certainly take advantage of, the reality is we have a lot of people right now in fear, not only of being in work, but or being at work, but also just generally in fear of what's going to happen next. What's this month going to look like? What's next month going to look like? Is this going to change things for some period of time to come, right? So dealers are trying to figure out how to respond and how to respond in the best ways to not only keep business intact, but keep things moving in a positive direction. So lots to talk about as we unwrap this. And we have several guests on the show today. Our main featured guest today is going to be Mr. Brad Wise. He's the general manager and operating Furman Chevrolet here in Brandon, Florida. Got Furman Chevrolet and Mazda here close to us. And by the way, they've done a bang-up job. I'm sure we'll be talking about that with Brad, but unbelievable numbers. I believe they're the oldest Chevrolet store in the state of Florida, and hitting some new numbers recently that are absolutely crazy. And one of the things we love about Brad is he's always looking to better himself. It's kind of funny how successful people do that. You get around successful people and you tend to find out that they work even harder at figuring out how to become more successful, right? And I don't think it's necessarily about chasing dollars. In fact, I've found that most of the people who really, begin to do abundantly well is because they're chasing their potential, right? They're maximizing every opportunity because they know it's possible at that point. So, so surround yourself. This is probably a great time, by the way, in what we're going through, to surround ourselves with the right people, the right perspective, the right attitudes, and all that good stuff. So as I open up, it's kind of interesting. I did share some things that that sort of obviously hit home as we begin this conversation today. But as I open up, I also find the fact that Dave is taking longer to get in here than I had planned. So here we go. We kind of run out of things to say. But it kind of reminds me, you guys ever watch the news people, right? They kind of live by that monitor. We don't have one of those, but they live by that monitor. And if that monitor goes away, man, they are in trouble. They're not like radio people. Radio people just can go and go and go, right?
Oh, yeah.
But those people on the monitor, man, if that monitor shuts down, they're in trouble. Like me. No. But here's the thing. My guys are really laughing at me now. So here's the thing, though. Today we're going to get into a few things. We're going to talk about outbound calls, like what, everyone right now in the dealership. And I was talking with two different dealerships, one for a live virtual drop-in training early this morning in Alabama, and then another one here locally in Tampa, where I was actually at their store working with their team. And one of the things that is happening universally across the market right now, because of the shortage in traffic, what's the first thing that we typically do as dealers? It's like, hey, get on the phones. Let's get everybody. Let's follow up on everything. Right now is the time to kind of buckle down and start reaching out to people and see if we can get some people into the store. And although that's a wonderful thing, we have to think about right now our approach when we call or reach out to that prospect. Is it going to be something that's effective? I mean, if we're calling at the wrong time just to be another sales call, then I think we're maybe missing something. But our approach, I think, is really key. And today we're going to get into a couple of things that I feel will be not only good ways to reach out to a customer, but effective ways to maybe create a compelling reason for them to actually show up to the store. Maybe sound a little bit different this time than we typically do when we're reaching out to customers. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the fact of why service departments right now are actually doing fairly well. We've spoken to so many dealers just in the last couple of days, and their service traffic is actually good right now. So we'll talk about why that is, and the difference of maybe the scare versus the scare of going somewhere versus the scare of actually buying, right? So I think those are two separate things. So, and then we're going to talk about a little bit about where dealers stand when it comes to what kind of moves should we be thinking about right now as far as scaling back or ramping up, right? Or at least holding our own. So we'll talk about that as well when it comes to our staff. And then, of course, the inevitable question is, and we don't really know where this is going. I did hear today, I saw online that NADA, and again, this source comes from online, so I'm assuming that it's credible. Everybody laughing at that one, right? But but online today, I did see that the NADA was possibly lobbying Washington to have dealerships considered essential businesses. So in the event that we do go through a lockdown in other states or even our entire country, we would be considered an essential business in staying open. So there's some things there to talk about. And of course, there's that personal decision from the owner and management standpoint. Typically the owner makes this call, but the owner as a dealership owner What is our responsibility as far as staying open? What's the outlook? I mean, traditionally, we all know that the car business has been the last ones to go home in a sense, right? In other words, we're working most holidays. We're there till the last deal leaves, right? So we're typically not the ones that bow out when it comes to things like this. We're typically last minute, and we don't close the doors unless we have to. So this is unprecedented, what we're seeing, and we'll get into those conversations and more. And if Dave doesn't enter the room in a moment, we're going to bring our guest on anyway.
On the opposite side of that coin,
go ahead, Mike.
It's funny because there's a ton of Starbucks employees that are lobbying Starbucks to shut down because coffee is not essential to society.
That's true. We're seeing we're getting a lot of flack right now. Right now it's springtime, right? We're seeing spring break here in Florida.
Oh yeah.
And it's all over internationally on the news about our beaches, and it's literally right in our backyard.
Like 3,000 people on Clearwater Beach just chilling. We're like, wait a minute, that's not social distancing.
Yeah. And guess who they're interviewing, by the way? The college kids who are like half wasted at the beach about about why they should or shouldn't be there. So sometimes it can get kind of comical, but obviously we're dealing with a serious situation. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting what's happening, and of course how the auto industry is going to be affected. So those are that's the topic for today. We're going to talk about what's really happening and what's happening in our showroom. So, Mike, do you want to go to break before we bring on Brad, or do we just want to go straight to
We're going to
Brad
go straight into it. We already have Mr. Wise on the horn.
Let's do it. Mr. Brad Wise, General Manager of Furman Chevrolet here in Tampa, Florida, Furman Chevy and Mazda. And Brad, thanks for being on the show today, my friend.
Hey, it's good to be with you all.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about what's really, first of all, let's talk about what we're seeing. Here in Florida, we're one of the states that we're seeing a little bit larger percentage of impact as far as what they're reporting numbers wise. It's still fairly low in the grand scheme of things, but we're one of the top states. So, and in our county, Hillsborough County, is also one with some significant numbers when it comes to just in comparison. So, what's the mood like at the store? What have you seen? What have you seen so far as the impact? And can you believe we're where we're at based on where we were a week ago?
Yeah, it's funny. February was not only our best February ever, it was one of our best months ever. And we were on a really, really big high. We had all of our momentum going. We had a great team in place. Everything was clicking. The service department, the sales department, rarely do you get them all firing all cylinders. And then all of a sudden you just get punched in the face. And it's a perfect analogy of what can happen. I mean, I've been through the 9/11s. I've been through the remodels of General Motors or the wind down period. And if somebody would have said that General Motors was going to, if you were at a bar and somebody said, hey, General Motors is going to go bankrupt and so on, and they'd throw you out of the place. But it just goes to show you that anything can happen. Never say never. So here we are, big time. Personally, I've been fighting with myself. The momentum definitely has stopped, and you go through a couple different processes of feeling sorry for yourself. What are you going to do? Fear. All those are really real feelings, but I sometimes are a little intolerant of anything that gets in the way of a goal. But in this case, if our employees are afraid, if they're scared, if they feel sick, you gotta let them go home and do what they got to do for their family or what makes them feel more comfortable. And I'm really that's one thing I'm really working on. Try to have some empathy for all situations. We have our favorite waiters and waitresses at restaurants in town, and going in there and seeing the place empty and knowing that they're going to lose their job and there's no other job they can get in that field. So having empathy for people who live paycheck to paycheck or month to month, that this is a real thing. But I do believe that the world, not to get too philosophical, I think is going to be changed forever after this. Maybe, and I always say this, that there's always good that comes out of controversy. There is always a silver lining somewhere. So as long as we can stop the momentum of this, that's where the fear is that it just keeps getting worse and worse, that every hour we keep hearing more and more news and rumors are floating around, that once it does turn around, you're going to see the Dow probably go up 5,000 points in one day. and you're going to see people going back to work in droves, and we'll probably get back to where we were, and maybe even better. But for right now, the most important thing is not our business, and it's not our sales, and it's not cars. It's our employees and our guests and our customers and our friends and our family. And if I can offer any advice today to anyone on any of those things, I'd be glad to do it.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. So it's kind of interesting, and I'm so happy that we have you on the show today and representing the position of the general manager at a store, because it's one thing to come in and you have your role, right? But those who are in positions of leadership, that especially in the general manager position, where now you have to consider so many different things, not just yourself and keeping yourself mentally healthy and having a good perspective and outlook about moving forward, but also now you've got a business that you're essentially responsible for, right? You also have all of these people and departments, and you've got to worry about numbers as well as well-being for everyone. Your customers is just such a bigger outlook. Are you personally, Brad, speaking with other GMs in the business and talking to other leaders about what this is looking like, and or what is that? Is that ramped up for you at all?
Yes, at our organization, Furman, we have numerous stores and numerous general managers that we all communicate with and talk about those subjects. But really, with the internet, it's a close-knit family out there. I mean, if you're any information you're looking for, all the posts that are out there are all really good too. A lot of people in the different industry Facebook groups are talking about it, and you can listen to their messages and what they're doing to combat this or combat that. And plus, success leaves clues. Seeing what other organizations are doing with their communicating with their guests via email or their websites, with their message that right now the buzzword is they're doing deliveries remotely, concierge service, or doing everything online, bringing the car to them. And then there's also communicating with your employees on what's happening as far as the amount of cleanliness that we're doing in the facility to make sure that we're doing everything they can to be safe. So, live conversations with people, yes, but mostly, the internet's just a wonderful place to get the pulse of what's going on really quickly.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to kind of get into is really what it's beginning to look like now that we kind of have digested these and made these adjustments. I did see several dealers that had updated their websites with offering, like you mentioned, Brad. The first thing that comes to mind is, hey, can we get this car to you? Can we deliver it? Can we make it more of a limited contact transaction, if you will, or at least take the fear of coming in and leaving home away? So there's certainly that. What are a couple of other good practices? I mean, I know that I kind of opened up with the fact that, the first thing we typically do when traffic is down is we have all of our people get on the phones, right? Let's get everybody in. Let's drum up any business we can. But maybe the approach of that outbound call now, or that follow-up, or those leads, maybe it's a little bit different. I mean, do you have any words of wisdom there when reaching out to a customer? Because the last thing I want to maybe hear from or feel like I'm getting a sales call in the middle of a crisis.
Well, here's the best thing you can do. I do a lot of walk around. That's how I manage. And I walk around in all the departments. And yesterday when I was in our Mazda facility, there was a guest standing there at the service counter. And I asked her, the typical, how you doing? And she said, fine. And I said, no, really, how you doing? And then she told me the whole story. And you can find out what your guests, we say the word guest here. The customer is a dirty word in the Furman land, so I use the word guest. But you get a really sense for how guests feel in their own skin right now. There's no wondering. You just ask them. When you see them sitting out in the service drive, ask them how they're doing. And then ask them again, now, how are you really doing? And then they'll give you the truth, And what I'm finding, and I don't pretend to have the answers here. This is such a unprecedented situation. I'm not a doctor. I have no evidence to feel this way other than instinct, is that, I don't think people really want the in-home demonstration, and they're really craving that. I think right now people are uncertain about their jobs, and they see the stock market, so the first thing on their radar is not to go out and spend a bunch of money. That being said, there is traffic. Service departments aren't off that much. The sales department, we're off 16 cars over last year on the same day, and we've had one extra Saturday already under our belt, so really we're not that far off. mostly because we had a really good start at the beginning of the month, and then when this happened, it has slowed down. So the best thing that we can do is listen to our guests, really talk to them like human beings, and our employees. Sit down and just say, how you doing? And know how really how are you doing? You know, how you dealing with this? How you dealing with the fact that your child might not be going to school and now your spouse has to deal with that? And, you know, just really getting to know your people on a personal level more than you did before. And how can I help you? You know, in any way, any resource that I have to help you, because we're going to need these people, and they're going through real challenges. And I think your people need to know what steps you're taking to make the facility sanitized. You know, there are things that you can do, even though supplies are very low. There's your cleaning crew, for example. There's things that they can do to upgrade the amount of cleaning that they do through various products. Today, we received a chemical from our uniform company that, for lack of a better word, is like napalm. I mean, the list of things that this is like industrial grade material that our employees see. All the rails being wiped down today, all the computers being wiped down. They need to see that we're taking this seriously, and that it's just the best way I described it to my managers is that when you were a child in your room and you could hear your parents arguing, you felt unsafe and you felt unsecured and you felt unsettled. Well, our people can't see our managers afraid. They can't see it. We need to be strong, confident, and that this too shall pass, and we'll come out the other side stronger. And when you're going through hell, just keep going. All the cliches you can think about. That's the face we have to put on this as managers, so our people feel like it's okay. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I think when we do have clients in the showroom, or guests, as you say, Brad, and I love that term, by the way, but as we have guests in our showroom, right, our demeanor and the way that we're carrying forward is a big difference. I also think that it's important when you have guests in the showroom to maybe have that person that's wiping down things, maybe have them more active at that time, right, when they're guests in the showroom, so that they can actually physically see that there are measures being taken. So we have a few comments.
That's called the optics, not to interrupt you, but the optics of that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
That not only is it real, but the optics, to know that your employees know that we're taking this seriously, and that our guests, that they know that we're doing everything we can to, you know, prevent, you know, any further exposure.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. You know, we say a lot by what we're doing versus what we're saying. So I think that's huge. Thank you for that. And that's a great term to identify it, are those optics, right? So a few comments on social media. We have Baron Reynolds. Your people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Amen, brother. And we've got William McCormick. Let's see, logging in a little late, but with a customer is in finance. That's great news, William. You've got a customer in finance. Chelsea Combs says, I think right now is a good time to be helping our community through this, setting ourselves up correctly for when this is over. I think that's also huge. You know, maybe this is an opportunity, Brad, to take a look at, you know, how we can contribute as a dealer. You know, I think oftentimes we have, as dealers, we have so much opportunity that we don't necessarily leverage with our community. We have an amazing facility. We have abilities to do certain things. And quite frankly, we even get, if, you know, when we're doing things for the community, not that this is the motive, but oftentimes we'll get media coverage that talks about that because we are a landmark in the community. Maybe speak to that for a moment, Brad.
Yeah, we've been in business for 125 years. And, you know, if anybody's going to make a statement of what's happening in town, it should be somebody like us. But even going deeper than that, I mean, for instance, I'll say Chevrolet, for example, has really stepped up for its dealers. They've adjusted our stair step number this month, where there is no objective that we're going to get paid a certain amount per car regardless if we hit it or not. They've lowered a lot of the criteria and the training qualifications and the CSI qualifications. Today I got an email from Edmunds that they're taking our bill and they're cutting it in half. You know, those are the things that we'll remember. Those are the things that we'll remember when things turn around, whether, you know, or if things got worse and we had to cut advertising. We'll remember not who our friends are, but somebody who stepped up in a time when it wasn't opportunistic, that they weren't wanting something. They just strictly just offered a gesture to help out under these times. So I'm surprised that Chevrolet has done as much as they've done for their dealer network, based on yeah, everything that's happening. So, we can still pull this month out based on some of the things that Chevrolet is helping us with. And as long as, the news doesn't get worse, I think we might be able to limp into the finish line this month, and then we'll see what happens. But never know. Tomorrow we could wake up and have a completely different story. So,
yeah. So those are great.
I actually wanted to say something because Brad hit something.
Go ahead, Mike.
Really big on the head. It's now is the time. I mean, I understand the business side of it, but now is the time to build your reputation in the community, because now is the time that you're going to make an impression on everybody around you that they're going to literally remember. When you have people nowadays, the survey goes back. People would rather go to the dentist than go to a car dealership, and now is the time that you can start flipping stats like that and showing people that you do care. You're not just looking for a sale. You do care about the community that you're involved in.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that those are great points, Michael. I think that's really important. It is in time of opportunity. It's funny, but I think that when we see dealers step up to the plate, and we see examples of not just dealers, but individuals within a dealership doing certain things on social media, different things where we're now in an age where we can be exposed to what someone is doing that gives a great result. There are those who see this and take advantage of the opportunity, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean they see an opportunity to do something positive that will also have positive byproduct for them as well. And I think that's just being, great at doing what you do. So let's go back to this idea, Brad, that, because we're hearing from a lot of dealers that our service departments are doing well right now. And, there's two things there that the obvious of a lot of people are able to come to the store to service right now because they may not have to be at work. But the other thing that tells me is it's not so much that they're afraid to go somewhere as it may be, if our sales are a little slow, it's more about the fear of do I spend right now? Do I buy right now? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't see the, driving up and down Adamo Drive here, which is a very busy road, as you know. It's not a ghost town. All the restaurants that are open anyway have people in there. A lot of the drive-thrus especially. I mean, I remember yesterday I tried to go to lunch 4 different places. I couldn't because the drive-thrus were just so long. People didn't want to go inside, but they were still out and about. So we're not just quarantined for right now. People are out and about. But yeah, it's just that when you see the stock market like it is, and people getting laid off, it's got to have an effect. I mean, I can sit here and say, look at my garden and say there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. Well, there's weeds, but how you deal with them is going to be the difference. And sometimes problems are blessings in disguise, and I know we don't see those yet, but I'm sure on the other end of this, there's going to be a lot, just like in 08. I mean, the best thing that ever happened to the car dealers was in 08 when the sky was falling. We were able to cut expenses that we didn't need to begin with, because you didn't need the courage to cut them. You had to do it,
Right.
And then you had to get better at treating your leads and dealing with your leads. You didn't have the luxury of having so many that you could ignore them and only sell the ones that were raising their hand the highest. It was a matter of survival. So when things came back, dealers were highly profitable because they right-sized their business, and they did what they had to do as far as lead handling and guest experience and the facilities that I remember Alan Beatty from Chevrolet had everybody in Vegas or somewhere where the sky was falling, and it took a leader like him to stand up in front of us and say, we need to come out on the other side of this thing and improve our facilities. And that was the last thing dealers wanted to hear at that time. We were looking at wanting to save money. We were looking at him like he was crazy, but he delivered that speech, and we left there motivated and inspired to really make this happen. And that's what we have to do to our people, to let them know that whatever happens, we can deal with it, and we're going to come out on the other side of this better and bigger. And I know it doesn't feel that way right this second, but history has shown that when markets fall, they come back higher than they were 4 years later. It's all math. It's all history back and forth, even though this one's unprecedented because it's a health concern. And let's face it, we could lose our lives. So that's an element here that has never really happened in society. So they really can't count on history too much. But, we worry about the things we control, and what you focus on happens. So if you focus on fear, that's what's going to happen. If you focus on, something that you can control, I think that's a better way to go.
Yeah, definitely agreed, and great points, Brad. So we have another comment, Charlie McHale. Be honest to the customer. This is a sales call. I wouldn't be doing my job as your person in the car business if I didn't tell you the best time and the best chance to move you up in a few model years, lower your payments with no payments for 90 days. I think that's important, and there's more there to that that Charlie has. Now, let's go back to that real quick, because earlier when we opened up and we talked about the fact that the last thing that I want to hear is a sales call, during a time of crisis. I think most consumers would say they would agree with that. However, Charlie brings up a good point, and I also want to kind of reiterate, because we didn't kind of expand upon that, but I just believe that sales call needs to be different. It doesn't need to sound or look like a sales call, and we need to consider our approach. That's what kind of how we opened up the show. And Brad, one of the things that I've been coaching dealers on over the last couple of days is really how to make that outbound call and share the good news of what we know, that General Motors and other companies have stepped up to the plate. And one of the things that, in ways that I've been coaching dealers to open up that call, or salespeople, is when we make that call, that outbound call to the customer, that we open up with, hey, it's Dave over at Furman Chevrolet. And by the way, we're reaching out to our customers, obviously in light of current events, or in light of recent events, right? That way we're acknowledging that right off the bat. And then I'm going to go on to, I do have some breaking news, but before I share with you what's happening, how are you doing? How, has this affected you? In other words, going back to that approach of, wait a minute, how are you first? I do have some compelling news to share. I kind of tease them with that by opening up with, in light of recent events, I felt compelled to reach out to you and share some breaking news. But before I go there, how are you doing? And getting that feedback from the customer first. And then what I can do is I want to come along with the message that consumers and the public are hearing right now in regards to how this is affecting the economy. So how I would go on with that call is, when I share with them the breaking news, hey, Mr. Customer, obviously, the president, everyone's been on, doing breaking news every, few hours. We're getting updates, and now you've seen some economic things happening as far as stimulus and whatnot that are scheduled. I just wanted to share with you also what Chevrolet and General Motors, they've stepped up now. They're also offering some relief on your budget over the next few months. So that's how I want to open up that call, in my opinion. What do you think about that, Brad?
Well, Chevrolet's getting some heat right now, maybe being a little too opportunistic.
Uh-huh.
And they're only getting half the story. The whole story is a three-pronged approach. Chevrolet is reactivating everyone's OnStar emergency services, whether it's expired or not. They're reactivating that for free. Number two, they're giving you free Wi-Fi in the vehicle, whether that's expired or not, to current Chevrolet owners. So when we're making those phone calls, those are two stories that we can tell. Everybody knows the deals are out there. They're everywhere. Mm-hmm. You don't even have to tell them about it. They know they exist. Let them bring up the fact that, if they want to bring it up in conversation, or, have some tact, and maybe, as you know, but the focus of the phone call has to be what Chevrolet is doing for you. And I'm sure the other manufacturers are doing something that you can speak to, or if you're just calling to do a check-in phone call, if you need any assistance picking something up that's a little bit slower here at the dealership, we've got porters at your disposal. If you need somebody to pick up some medicine or something, we're a friend. Maybe that's going, beyond what's considered to be reasonable. But Chevrolet, it's not just the deal. The 0% for 84 months is obviously an unprecedented, historic deal.
Sure.
And people who are secure in their jobs, they ought to come out and buy a car, because that's about as good as it gets when it comes to a deal. But that really wasn't the whole focus of the program from Chevrolet anyway.
Yeah, I love those points that you brought up, Brad. And I wasn't aware that Chevy was doing that, but now that I am, I definitely would open up a call talking about those things, right? The things that, in other words, we're looking out for you first. If you want to hear some of the other things that the manufacturers have helped us with economically, I'm happy to share that too. But I love those points that you brought up, and that should be on the very front end of that call. So from what I understand here, Mike's giving me the signal. It looks like we're wrapping up. I'm going to get closing comments from you, Brad. Just maybe take 60 seconds to share maybe anything that's on your heart, and kind of leave us until we meet again next week.
I mentioned it earlier, but if you're a manager or a leader or anybody, I would get out of your office and walk around and talk to your guests in service or out on the lot and talk to your employees and really ask them how they're doing, and they'll tell you. And after doing that, I felt closer with the people I've talked to than I ever have before. I mean, I got into deep conversation with the person in the service drive about the fact that I was joking. Do you have any young kids at home? About it's kind of a joke right now that wine sales are going through the roof because their kids are going to be home for 3 or 4 months. So that segued into another conversation. And I got to know this guest more than I ever would have known otherwise. I probably wouldn't even been over there if it weren't for this. So what that means is bringing the world closer together, I think. And like I said in the onset, I think we're going to be changed forever, and maybe in a good way. If we can just turn this thing around where the cases, start flatlining, and this cruise ship turns another direction. That's what we need to get. And we do that, I think. I think let's face it, everybody's with the division in this country with politics and social media and haters and social media impact. Maybe this is just the checkup from the neck up that we needed, and if we can stop this crisis now, maybe there's be something great on the other side. So, last thing I want to say, salespeople out there, just keep your head up. I would even suggest you maybe get into a SUV out on the lot by yourself and look for ups coming in on the lot. Fill yourself up with some self-development on the radio or on your phone through the vehicle. Have the mirrors positioned where you can see activity and people pulling in. That way, if you don't want to be in the showroom with people and you want to distance yourself, get in a vehicle. Listen to something positive. Listen to the news. See what's going on. At the same time, watching for prospects on the lot, making phone calls. Most people have CRM on their phone or a laptop, and you can do this job remotely by yourself in an SUV, in the air conditioning or the heat, wherever you're at, and as long as your manager approves. But that would be my suggestion right now.
Wow. Hey, Brad, I can't thank you enough for being on today. I appreciated every comment that you made today, as well as I'm sure our entire audience did. It was so great to be able to hear from you. So thank you for being on the show, and we'll see you very soon.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Good luck,
Brad. Thank you. Hey, we've got comments rolling in still. We've got Chelsea Combs said, side note, people are saying email is up by 52% because everyone is checking it for updates. If you have sent out an email blast yet you need to, if you haven't yet you need to, even better if you direct that blast towards, now my screen just went up, towards what you're doing to help your community, right? Yeah, absolutely. We're just talking about that, right? Our motive, our approach when reaching out to a customer right now, I think is going to be elevated in the customer's mind. The perspective that they and how they view our contact is going to be huge. So we got to be really conscious about how we're maximizing those opportunities. So are we taking a break, Michael, before we bring on our spotlight?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hey, don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back very quickly. We've got our spotlight coming up, and we've got Sandy Zunino, founder and CEO and owner of Innovative Auto HR. And we're going to talk about some very cool things that surround our activity and what dealers should be thinking about right now as we go through this crisis. We'll be back in about 30 seconds.
Hey dealers, David Villa, CEO of IPD Agency in Tampa, Florida. Listen, we're in uncertain times. How do we sell cars? What works? I have dealers that are spending more money. I have dealers that are not spending money at all. Your colleagues really don't know what works, what doesn't, what should I do? I believe that whatever we do, the message has to be relevant. It has to be a message for today. Even if it's a good offer, if it's a big discount, or if it's a great savings, or if it's wonderful financing, it doesn't work unless there's a why buy, unless you get the heart of the customer and explain to them why this is important to them. So I'm going to tell you that we can help you right now. Why? Because I've seen it happen in an unprecedented way. In the last few days, we've been running Facebook campaigns. Listen, there's nothing new. We've been running these for over a year now with great results, but it's all about the message. So we've developed a message for right now. Look, the virus, the situation, the uncertainty is going on, and customers, they're not scared to buy, dealers. They're not fearful to buy. They're just waiting to buy. So the OEMs have reached out, right? And they've said, look, we're going to make this an incentive. We're going to give 0% for up to 84 months. Other manufacturers have deferred payments for up to 6 months. Some have said no payments for 90 days. I have dealers that are saying, hey, we're going to pay the sales tax for our customer. We're going to pay the sales tax on all pre-owned sales. The automotive industry is credible, it's flexible, and listen, we adapt. We've always adapted. We've adapted through every challenge we faced. This is none different. So I'm going to appeal to you. Watch this short video that this is connected to and see why and how we at IPD Agency right now, we can start this as soon as tomorrow. We can start it Monday. We can start it the last week of the month, and we can help you in this climate today, regardless of what's going on, through Facebook, sell an additional 25, 35, even 45 plus vehicles, depending on your market and depending on the size. It's a real deal. Yesterday, I had one of my clients hit in the morning. Their event started at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. By the end of the day, there were over 250 customers that reached out inquiring on why and how they could purchase a vehicle based on the offer. Why? Because it got their heart. It got their attention. It made sense. Dealers, don't shrink back, but also be smart. Look, call in. Let's discuss the strategy. One of my team members here are glad to get on the phone with you and talk to you about how you can sell cars and how you can implement a strategy, not just throw wasted money out there. The answer is not just spending frivolously, but it's also not sitting back and not doing anything, right? Don't shrink back. Let's put a strategy together. We have a strategy for you. We're the experts in advertising. You're the experts in selling cars. Hey, let's come together and make March memorable. Hey, this is David Villa with Baird Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in West Memphis. I spoke directly to Keith Baird, and this is what we have for you, the Facebook consumer. Listen, Facebook is the best place to get a deal. Let me tell you why. Right now, with all the uncertainty going on, Baird Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in West Memphis is overstocked. We have no more room, and we have new and pre-owned vehicles that have been allocated and are on the way as we speak, so we must get rid of more than 100 additional new and pre-owned vehicles between now and the end of March. No exception. So what does that mean for you? It means the Facebook buyer gets the deal of all deals. Let me tell you a little bit about what Keith wants to do for you between now and the end of March. So we spoke to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer has stepped up to the plate. They've agreed to do 0% financing for up to 84 months and no payments for 90 days. You heard me right. You buy now, you don't pay anything for 90 days. In addition to that, Keith Baird and Baird Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in West Memphis will pay your sales tax until the month of March is over. You heard me right. You don't have to pay your own sales tax. You don't have to finance it in a loan. You will have your sales tax paid by us between now and the end of March. Again, because we need to move more than 100 new and pre-owned vehicles before the end of the month. We spoke to our banks and our lenders, and repossessions, bankruptcy, slow credit, no credit. It doesn't matter. All credit will be accepted between now and the end of this month. Why? Because we must move over an additional 100 new and pre-owned vehicles to make room for the cars and trucks that are on their way as we speak. It's a deal for you right now. Come on in. All right, guys, you saw the video. That was just a little taste of one of the examples of what we're doing right now to help you, your colleagues, sell 35, 45 plus vehicles between now and the end of March. We can start today. We can start tomorrow. Get on the calendar before we fill up. Call the number that's been on the screen the entire time. And look, one of our team members will show you how you can start executing today.
Hey, welcome back. You're watching Auto Dealer Live, and it's Dave Cribbs in studio, and our co-host David Villa is actually working with a dealer right now on a traffic driving campaign. So he's not in studio at the moment, and of course Chris Fritcher was unable to be in studio this week. But we're moving on, and not only are we moving on, but we have something exciting. We always saved our spotlight for the second part of the show, and we have a great guest today, Miss Sandy Zanino, founder and CEO and owner of Innovative Auto HR, and it's probably a really great time to be talking to Sandy. Sandy, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, especially given the circumstances. Obviously, our country's under an attack of sorts, and it's affecting our business. And I wanted to get into some conversation with maybe the way things should look and what we should be concerned about, and maybe even contingency plans when it comes to our dealerships right now. Obviously, traffic's down. There's been some cities that have been where there's been closings. There's certainly closing of certain types of businesses here in Florida. Do you feel like the dealerships are next? And then we'll maybe get into some more conversation about what that might look like.
Oh, well, I don't know if dealerships are next. I think Brad actually alluded to the fact that dealerships may be deemed as essential. But I wouldn't want to talk about that. What I definitely want to talk about, though, is, the fact that these aren't normal times, that we're operating in. I was talking to my 90-year-old dad yesterday, and he said that to me. These aren't normal times. And, in an environment of all this super high anxiety and a lot of uncertainty, it's leadership really, kudos to Brad Wise, right? That's when leadership that's when it's needed. And he's being visible in his stores and he's helping his employees. Brad's the front end. I'm the people, processes, and compliance. And dealers are going to have a lot of, as we know, the new legislation that just came out, there's a lot of things to navigate right now, all over the place, not just one thing, so.
Yeah, so let's talk about it from an HR perspective, because traditionally in the car business, Sandy, that we're obviously hard charging, we're sales driven, we're retail hours, right? We're the ones that are always working on the holidays, staying till the last customer leaves. I mean, we're kind of hardcore when it comes to work and being at work, right? There's not a lot of shutdown time at a dealership typically. So with that in mind, we have different departments within the store. I mean, we have, people working in other areas that may not have that same type of personality, or even within the sales area, we may have people that genuinely get concerned, right? We have families, we have children at home talking about exposure. I mean, everything that we see, there's anxiety that's caused. I mean, how much should we be paying attention to that? And are there any areas of suggestion as far as when someone says they're uncomfortable, should that be justification enough to, maybe not come to work right now?
Well, I can't tell dealers what to do. What I can say is, I think that right now is a time to put people before profits. And I would caution against managers, particularly with the new law, the Family First Act. I would caution managers and dealers from telling people that they can't come to work, particularly if they have, with all the school closures that are going on, that they need to come in. Like you said, I've been around for a while, and I know how we can be. And I've heard some beautiful stories, and I've heard some not so beautiful stories. And again, I'll point to Brad Wise. He kind of talked about it. If people are scared, your people are scared. And so one of the things that I did a little live yesterday, and I encouraged dealers and managers to think about the future, because in our amazing and wonderful industry that we are, we will get through this because we know how to pivot. We know how to make the lemonade out of lemons, right? We know how to do this, and this will end at some point. So my response to that is, what kind of employer do you want to be perceived as when this is over? Do you want to be the dealership that said, you know what, if you're scared, go ahead, go home. I've actually talked to a dealer, talked to somebody this morning who had employees who were afraid because they had older parents at home, they had somebody with cancer at home. That's actually one thing that, I study this law a lot. That's I'm a little weird. I actually like all that stuff. But largely, people with compromised immune systems and older people are kind of excluded from this protection law for employees. And older people are they represent about 30%. And when I say older, I'm talking about, older Generation X and up. So, 50s and a little bit over, really 60. So these are the people who, from all intents, are very vulnerable, and they don't have much protections. So, if you've got somebody particularly with a compromised immune system, I would suggest sending them home. Who wants to be? We don't know what's going to happen. This is changing every day, sometimes by the hour.
Yeah, it really is.
So we don't know. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's, it's heating up too, as far as, how people are expressing themselves in the way that they feel about this, right? And we're beginning to see a lot of new messages. I know this morning I saw, a big campaign by healthcare workers that were basically saying, hey, we'll stay at work if you'll stay at home, right? So now we're beginning to see even some criticism of those who are actually going to work. So there's a lot of things at play here, and this is definitely uncharted territory. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it absolutely is uncharted. Like my dad said, not normal times. He said he's never seen anything like this in his lifetime, and he's been here 90 years. And I really do agree with that. Personally, I know that it's really tough decisions beyond tough decisions for businesses to make right now. But people are scared, and our healthcare workers are, they're our front line, and they don't, one thing I want to talk about too is information, making sure that the communication lines in your dealership are open, and providing information that is good information. The NADA has a fantastic resource website, and with links to everything.
I think that's that's a great point, Sandy. So NADA dealers, if you're listening, make sure you check out NADA's resource as well. And Sandy, I'll kind of end with this. I think you brought up a good point, because I kind of threw out there the whole thing about, should dealers be open? Should are you thinking about the pressure that people are receiving just for going to work? Are you concerned about families that or people that are maybe at work that are concerned about exposing their kids, having anxiety, all this stuff, right? So there was a lot of weight there to put on someone who's a decision maker. Typically would be an owner, maybe even more often than a GM, but of how they're proceeding, right? But here's what I would say is that you said something in your comments that really stood out, and that's that they're having to make tough decisions, because don't forget that they're also looking out for the interest of the employee by staying open as well. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's a position that I don't know how a dealer makes the decision to close if it comes to that. Sometimes I can't even imagine being there. And because dealers do care. We do, as a whole, we care about our people. I remember 2008 when entire BDC departments had to go. And I remember what my dealer making that decision felt. So you're absolutely right. And there are a lot of resources out there for us. I was on a ComplyNet webinar today. They're a safety company, and amazing. They offered a plan. If you don't have a plan, the one thing I would definitely say is it's better late than never. If you haven't put out a plan, if you haven't really started, there are so many things that dealers are doing, and we have all these great ideas. One thing I would say is remove everything from the sales floor, from everywhere. Remove the coffee stuff. Remove things that people can touch.
That's
somebody was
advice.
talking about, and I think in the comments put something about I think it might have been Subaru Steve wrote something about our customers afraid of going on a test drive. So I know when I walk into the grocery store right now, I really appreciate somebody with gloves handing me a wipe so that I can wipe off my car. Right?
Absolutely.
So, there are little things that we can do, and communicating regularly and all the time and being visible for our people, because we need to all pull together.
Fantastic. Sandy, can't think of a better way to wrap up the show and wrap up the conversation today. Thank you so much for joining us. And no stranger to the show, Sandy's is in Nino. And Sandy, can you put out your contact info for dealers that may have further questions?
I certainly will. My number is 941-306-8310, and I'll type it in the contact.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, that wraps it up. We flew through it. Mr. Michael.
Yeah, we did.
Mr. Mike, we got let's put you on camera real quick. Can you adjust that scene? Okay, hey, for those of you Haven't seen Michael in a while. Michael Cherub running the show here, helping make this thing happen. A little short-handed today as Dave got on a last-minute call and deal with a dealer, and Chris is not in studio today. But hey, we had a great show. We had Mr. Brad Wise and also Sandy Zanino wrapping it up. And hey, maybe there's more changes to come. I wouldn't be surprised between what happens now and next week. But let's all stick together, pray for one another, help each other out, help somebody this week, and let's go make it happen.
Wash your hands. Later.
Wash your hands.